Hey, J-Mo, the new Triumph's here.
What? I was just reading about it. It's already here?
Yeah, it's here right now. We can go ride it.
Let's go check it out. Dang, dude, this thing is even cooler than I expected. Definitely better than the photos.
Yeah, I'm itching to ride this thing.
Let's go gear up. Today is an exciting day because Motocross Action is finally getting to ride the all-new 2024 Triumph TF250X. The Triumph brand has been around for over 120 years, starting all the way back in 1902. They were racing bikes after World War II, but they haven't been in the off-road market in a long time. This is their first ever motocross bike and is the first of many. The 450 is coming later in 2024. This TF250X is the product of a 5-year project developing their motocross bike, and we are excited to finally get the chance to ride it. It looks like it's been inspired by some of the other manufacturers. They've taken the pros and cons from the other bikes, built on them. It's got an aluminum frame, a big bore short stroke engine, and we're excited to ride it today in Florida. Triumph brought us all the way out to Gatorback, home of Mini O's. I haven't been here since 2011, and I can't wait to ride this awesome bike right now. So Ricky, you've been riding this thing a long time. I test a lot of bikes. What do you think I'm gonna think about this thing?
You have tested a lot of bikes, dude, but with as much experience as you have, I know like the bar is set high, and I feel pretty confident that you're gonna like it. I really do. I'm excited for you to ride it, have the opportunity to ride it. Yeah, I think you're gonna like it, and obviously I hope that you like it. We'll find out.
All right, let's try it. Dude, this thing is sick. First impression, hey, first lap impressions. I haven't even jumped any of the jumps yet. I am stoked on this thing, so I can't wait to ride. It's gonna be hard to get me off this thing.
We have to peel you off?
Dude, that was a great first impression. Wow guys, Ricky was right. This thing was very impressive. I can't believe the Triumph's first ever motocross bike worked that good here today at Gatorback in Florida. This thing is built off of the best aspects that each of the other brands had. Triumph has the unique experience of jumping into the motocross market 50 years after Honda, 50 years after Yamaha and all the other major manufacturers, and they're building off of the best aspects that those 250Fs have, and they've implemented it into this bike. The guys are pretty humble, hanging out with the head of off-road development for this bike, hanging out with the head of the GM for the US market for Triumph. Both guys are super humble. They're not claiming to have better products than everybody else. They're just claiming to have used the best aspects of each other brand, learning from those brands. They're not shying away for it. They said they had Yamahas, they had KTMs, and they were able to test those bikes and figure out their strengths and weaknesses and then implement them into this Triumph TF250X. And I think that's what made this bike so much fun today. So any loyal MXA follower, subscriber to the magazine, or somebody who watches all the MXA videos, you would know that this engine looks like a KTM copy. It's not a copy, but it is based off the KTM engine with the same exact bore and stroke as the 2022 and prior model KTM 250Fs. And Triumph took note of that when implementing this model. However, they do make it all in-house in Thailand at the Triumph manufacturing facility, and that is actually the same place where they made this aluminum frame. Now you'll notice this aluminum frame looks a lot like a KTM. Even this shape up here for the shock tower looks similar to the new 2024.5 factory edition frame, but it is made out of aluminum. Very different handling characteristics, very different stiffness characteristics as well. They talked about it in our presentation last night that they tried to match the stiffness of the engine cases to the stiffness of this aluminum frame. Steel is a little more flexible and it gives you a little more feel for the track. Aluminum is usually a little more rigid, but also lighter. Now this frame looks a lot like even the YZ two-stroke frames that have been known for being some of the best handling frames in the business. The foot peg to seat, seat to handlebar, that rider triangle geometry, also very similar to KTM. Not identical, but very similar. So how did that engine and frame feel on the track? Honestly, when I first got on it and riding through the pits, it felt quite a bit like a KTM. Similar vibration coming out of the exhaust and similar feel just hopping onto the track. But this aluminum frame, very, very different once you got onto the track and started picking up speed, especially when you're getting into the braking bumps and into the chop. It wasn't too rough here today, but we did get to feel the difference of this aluminum frame. Another huge difference about this bike, KYB suspension with spring forks. These things worked awesome on the track. I personally loved them today. The forks held up quite a bit where the shock was a little bit on the soft side. We'll get into that here in just a second. These are KYB forks, known as some of the best forks in the business, but they are not the speed sensitive dampening that you find on the KYB SSS forks on the Yamaha 250F and 450F. They are the AOS system inside of here, so different internals, but they worked great today. So another thing we've noticed with the suspension, the shock is a little bit soft in the rear. Forks have great hold up, but right off this jump right here, I can really feel the shock getting low in the stroke and kind of bottoming out actually going off this tabletop. Let's see if we can do it right now. Show you guys what I'm feeling. Even though Triumph is brand new to the motocross game, they did not skimp out on the little things that really make a great bike. Brembo brakes, front and rear, huge upgrade there. Similar to the KTM, similar feel on the track. Did take a little bit of time to break them in with new pads and new rotors this morning, but once we got it broke in, these things worked awesome on the track. Also, the swing arm here, it's hydroformed aluminum and it works great, obviously, but the cool part about it is this little ridge right here. They said no performance in it, just styling, and that's one thing that Triumph takes a lot of pride in. Looking cool as far as also working cool on the track too. Big one though, rear axle. This one has a floating axle. We usually upgrade to Works Connections floating axle. This comes like that stock. It all fits together nicely and just looks like a factory bike. The muffler also is able to be taken apart if you want to repack it, and that's a bonus feature that is giving you a little more bang for your buck. Another piece about this bike that is already proven technology in our industry is the Bellville washer spring inside of this clutch. That coupled with the Brembo hydraulic clutch at the top made this thing pull awesome today. No slippage, and we were riding this thing pretty hard. Another benefit, 1.8 radiator cap. Very, very thankful to have that thing stock on this bike. Also, while we're down here, check out the TIG welds on this aluminum frame. Every frame is hand welded in the Triumph factory, so that's something they felt was more consistent than robots. I would think robots are more consistent than people, but either way, these are all hand welded frames. Also, you can check out this little plastic piece right here holding the cables, making the TF250X look factory, and it definitely doesn't look like a first-year model. ProTaper handlebars come stock on this bike. Also, you got a pretty wild switch here: launch control, quick shift, traction control, and 2 map options that come stock. I messed with this quite a bit today, but we didn't get to access the Wi-Fi tuner that connects your smartphone to the bike to customize maps. We didn't get to do that today. We'll be testing that in a future video. 2 map options today though. The first map was most aggressive, the best map that they have, and then light on, that was a more mellow map. Today, obviously, 250F, I don't want a mellow map, but I could see how that would benefit a lighter rider, a novice rider, or a really muddy and slippery track. Traction control, also like map 2, a little more mellow, softens up the rear wheel. Not a fan of it for a pro level rider here today with perfect conditions, but in the slippery stuff could be nice. Also here, start stop switch with a check engine light, basically. It's kind of unique that Triumph has this. This light will come up and give you certain blinks if your engine's having problems, and that's when you can connect your smartphone to the bike to see what's going on internally. At the back wheel, we have a Pirelli MX32 tire. Now this is the skinnier 100 width rear tire, definitely nice for 125s, skinnier than most 250Fs though. Only the Honda comes with a 100 on the rear. All the other brands come with 110 width rear tires, so that's a little skinnier, also a little lighter, helps the bike feel a little faster on the track. 1.85 width on the rear DID Dirt Star rim. That's also a little bit skinnier than what you find. 2.15 on some of the other brands. 48 tooth rear sprocket. Now that's a little bit lower than we expected. We'll talk more about that here in a sec. DID 520 chain. Also, you got the proprietary Triumph hub. They made this in-house. Pretty impressive that they can make their own hubs like that. The spokes, they're made by UAM. That is the brand that makes all of Triumph's spokes for all of their spoked wheels. Of course, street bike brands, they don't have spokes on all their wheels, but the ones that do have spokes, they came with these same ones. I watched the guys closely today and I was sending it off some of these jumps, trying to break these wheels loose and really see how the durability is of these hubs and also spokes. I watched them tighten them. They did have to tighten them today, but they didn't come crazy loose. Nothing broke and nothing was too loose today. It was all expected for breaking in a new bike. Couple interesting things to note. The ignition cover and the clutch cover are all magnesium coated and then painted, so that helps with durability, makes your bike look better longer. But the weirdest part about this bike is the round bolts. Now the only way you'll be able to tighten or loosen these bolts is with a Torx fitting on your T-handle, and it's definitely weird. We've seen Torx bolts on KTMs and the Austrian brands, but they have room for a regular hex nut with an 8 or 10 mil. These things, you're gonna have to throw away your normal tools because you're gonna be using a lot of Torx bits when you're working on your Triumph 250. You kind of get the idea that I had a good time on this bike today, but I wasn't the only one to put all 3 hours on this thing. We brought out MXA's Dennis Stapleton, 43 years old, and he's raced in over 40 countries, and he's our most picky test rider. He's not grumpy, but he'll pick out just the smallest little problems with each bike and give us a long list to complain about. Dennis, let's hear what you thought about it.
So, Triumph offers a completely closed off airbox cover and this vented cover, which is toolless, comes right off, no tools to pull the air filter out. We were able to test both today. We obviously like the cover with holes in it, but there was one weird thing with the solid cover that allowed the bike to enter the turn a little better. It seemed like it lowered the RPMs and didn't push the front end into the ruts as much with the covered airbox. But the downfall was on acceleration. It was noticeable that it didn't pull quite as hard out of the turn. So we opted with this cover, but maybe with a different sprocket, the solid cover could be a win. So today we got to ride an awesome track, deep and loamy, lots of ruts. We did have a minor problem with the foot pegs sticking up, although it's an easy fix as Herbie sells the rubber boots that slide on over, which will eliminate that problem for an easy cost, not a big deal. One of the other things that worries us in other brands, we've had some issues over the years with the oil filler cap that turns forward. It's easy to knock off. We didn't have a problem today, so maybe it won't happen on this, but it is something that can happen, so pay attention. I'm a little more sensitive, probably the weird one in the group, but I was very pleased that I was able to keep the feet tucked in tight to the frame, and the shrouds had a little bit of a bow to be able to keep my legs tight, hold the bike steady on jumps. Radiator shrouds were long with the ruts today. I had no snags, not catching the end of the shrouds or anything weird, so good job on the plastic for day one.
I mentioned that 48 tooth rear sprocket on here. I was very surprised when we show up to see a 13:48 ratio on a stock 250F. Usually that's a little bit tall for this. I expected it to need a 50. When I rode it today, I realized why they put that 48 on there, because the gear ratios are a little bit tight. You do have to short shift this engine quite a bit. You'll see in the videos, I was on the rev limiter a lot, which means that I needed to shift more often today. Also, second gear did pull great in the tight technical corners with the soft dirt. I was impressed with that pull it had. Also, third gear even pulled me in some of the more wide open sweeper turns, but you do have to shift a lot. Another big topic that Triumph focused on was weight and saving weight on this bike. Now, they explained the weight of it. We had to convert it from kilos to pounds. We also had to subtract the 7 liters of fuel that they weighed this bike with, but it weighs in right around the 219, 220 range once you do all the math. We obviously need to get it home on our calibrated scale to see how it compares to the rest of the bikes. 219, 220, that would be equal to the lightest bike in the class. The Honda CRF 250 is at 219 pounds. Very, very light motorcycle on the track. Now, for me, first impressions, as soon as I hopped out there, I was impressed with how light it felt. But the lightweight feeling isn't only the sheer weight of the bike, but it also has to do with the engine, the rotating mass inside of the engine, and also the power it has off the crack of the throttle. A slow engine that weighs 200 pounds, that's gonna be a heavy feeling bike on the track. So it does have to have good grunt and also a good rotating mass inside the engine to let you dip in and out of corners. I was super impressed with how this thing handled today. So although I loved the handling of this thing and I was actually really impressed with it in the stock conditions, there were some minor things that we picked out once the track got a little bit rougher, and also once Dennis hopped on the bike. Dennis, what did you think about the suspension and what did we change?
Well, obviously the base setting was really comfortable, so that's great for your average customer. Comfort's really important. We did have a little bit of problem later in the day where some of the backsides of the jumps dried out. The crust of the shock, the very top of it, if the shock got tall, it had like a wallow feel, and we were like kind of searching, is it the 100 tire or is it the shock? We went round and round with rebound, high speed, low speed. We messed with a lot of clickers. At the end, we end up going back and raising the sag up for 105, closer to 100, 102 range. It really helped with the initial feel of the shock, holding it in a good rider acceleration position. So the bike was really balanced under gas. And then we went a couple clicks stiffer on the forks, as the track here is a little bit softer entering the turn. So under braking, the forks didn't dip as much. The ramp up feel had a lot of safety, a lot of good feel, as the fork did get low for the faster guy. Overall, the suspension was pretty good. You could chase your tail all day, back and forth, balancing the bike. But we had fun. We dropped the forks down to 1 mil. They start at 3. We did all the clickers on the shock. We went up and down on the sag. Overall, we got the bike to work pretty good in multiple occasions, and Josh and I got to run the same sag today. But it's not going to do anything because I'm 43, and I don't I don't hurt. Yeah. I just bent. I did that on my 17th birthday, so.
Thank you. Triumph 250 was very, very surprising. Better than I expected. Better than you expected?
Definitely better than I expected.
Spring forks were very, very nice today. There was no rigid feeling that I got on this track today, but, and there's a big but that we got to stick at the end of this video, because we are at a prime prepped track here at Gatorback in Florida. They fed us steak dinner last night. They've taken care of us by bringing us all the way out here to Florida. So we're kind of feeling like we're on our first date, kind of our heart eyes going on in the emotions here. So Triumph is doing their best to get us to feel good about the bike, but the real test is when we get home to Glen Helen. Glen Helen is the ultimate test. It's our dirt dyno, and we'll have to see how this bike reacts when we get home. But I did say, I had a ton of fun on this bike. After the first lap, I said we need to race it at a national this year. Hopefully we can make that happen. It is gonna be tough though, because I've only raced the nationals on 450s. I've been lucky enough to make the motos in the 450s the last few years. The 250 class be kind of I think a little bit harder for me. So if you guys are interested in seeing us race, or me race this Triumph TF250X at a national this season, let us know in the comments, and hope to, all right guys, so that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Off to California for us.